Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're joining in the world right now. I am super excited to be hosting our Travel Matters webinar series. I will give everyone just a second to sort of pull in, get seated, take a second. Maybe you want to grab your beverage of choice. We're going to be here for about 45 minutes, so please feel free to grab a notebook or anything before we sort of officially kick it off. So I'll start here in just a minute. Greg, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to
Looking
be here.
forward to our discussion. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling in from home in
Okay,
Orlando, Florida.
in Orlando. Okay, and how long have you been in Orlando?
I've been in Orlando for just over 3 years.
Okay.
Tourism Cares had a brick and mortar office outside of Boston for many, many years. And then as a result of the pandemic, we recognized that we could work virtually pretty effectively. And so now we have 11 of us really all across the country, which is a really good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. We're also in Discover Core a team that's just spread out everywhere. We that's the beauty of the online world, and the pandemic kind of did expose that the opportunity to be able to work wherever and still create, community and be able to still find ways of connecting across across time and space. Hmm.
Absolutely. And as well, the ability to be able to attract talent from all across the country as versus just regionally or, having to attract people to come to Boston, which the cost of living is relatively high there. So
Right.
that can be a challenge. So it
Absolutely.
gives us a lot more flexibility, especially as a nonprofit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, our office is out of San Diego, so we of course have a lot of people in California, but we got Alaska on the map. I live in Costa Rica. We have Brazil. We have a Brazilian that actually lives in California, and then somebody from Michigan who lives in Brazil. So we're a big mix of which is wonderful. It's true. It makes a really diverse and strong team.
It does.
Wonderful. Well, I think, let's see here. Hello from Nevada, somebody said. Hello from Nevada. Thanks for joining. Yeah, anyone else, feel free to chat in, tell us where you're joining in from. Really glad we have a great audience for today's series. I want to officially welcome our Discover Core listeners for joining our travel webinar series. In this series, we like to explore this transformative power of travel through conversations with inspiring voices from across the globe. I'm your host and travel specialist, Lynn Carvalia, and I am thrilled to be joined today by Greg Takehara, the CEO of Tourism Cares. Greg, thank you again for joining us.
No, my pleasure,
Greg,
Elin.
no, yes. Travel Cares, for those who don't know, is a leading force behind movements to make travel more meaningful, responsible, and community driven. Today, we're going to be discussing how travel is evolving, what it truly means to travel with purpose, and how your choices as a traveler can create meaningful, lasting impact on communities around the world. So let's get started. Greg, thank you for joining. We're pleased to dive into sort of the history and experiences that we feel Tourism Cares embodies. We also feel that it very much embodies what Discover Core cares about as well. This idea of, connecting with travelers and small communities in ways that creates meaningful change. So I'd love for you to start at the beginning, perhaps. I don't know where your journey started, how you got introduced to the world of travel, but maybe we can start it off there.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. What a great pleasure. I had the opportunity to meet Angela at the ASTA annual conference in Salt Lake City, where I was talking about meaningful travel. And like so many others in the audience, I was really just excited to get to speak to people like yourselves who have a similar mission, are very intentional about the way that they're going about business. It was really exciting to be amongst travel advisors who we know have such a strong voice and have such a direct influence on travelers' decisions. and just the intentionality that they have around responsible and meaningful travel. So that was really inspiring. So I'm glad that we get this opportunity to take this a step forward. But my
Yeah.
own personal journey has been one that has been many decades in the travel and tourism industry. I started with a tour operator. I had a law background, but I was able to work with a CEO in a legal capacity, but really get to learn the business. And that for me was really eye opening because as a youngster, I had always really kind of had a passion about travel and tourism. I remembered collecting, writing in for brochures just to get those brochures in the mail and see the places and people that were out there for me to potentially visit someday. So the thought of it being a career was something I really hadn't thought about. And then just like serendipity has it, it came about that I got this opportunity to work at the Mark Travel Corporation. And that was my first entree into travel and tourism. From there, I worked many years in the travel insurance space. And that was
Mm,
really kind of for me like a great next step to be able to take what I learned working for a tour operator and then getting to have the backing of an insurance policy to be able to help protect travel
hmm.
companies, help protect consumers in terms of their own personal investment, in terms of in terms of travel protection, and then subsequently had the opportunity to join the staff at Tourism Cares. And so while I was working in the industry, I, like 300 other travel and tourism professionals, came together in Ellis Island in 2003 at the first ever Tourism Cares event. And that
Mm,
was kind of, if you think back to that time, post 9/11,
sure.
kind of a little bit like coming out of the pandemic, a lot of uncertainty at that time about the
Hmm.
future of the industry, um, you know, unprecedented, situations where tourism literally shut down, which had
Sure.
never really happened in our lifetime. And now we've seen, unfortunately, two scenarios like that. But it raises a lot of questions about the future of travel and tourism. It gives people a chance to reset in many instances. But it also puts a spotlight on a lot of the problems that we have and challenges that we have within the industry. And that was the case in the wake of 9/11. Um, we were very fortunate that a couple of different of our founding organizations, USTOA, NTA, and ASTA, brought their
Hmm.
foundations together to become what is Tourism Cares today.
Oh,
And
wow.
that kind of coming together was a real
Mm,
show of force to say, how do we come together as an industry, bring people together to create a positive impact. And in the early days, we did that through volunteerism. So
mm,
in that instance, national parks, which unfortunately is the case today, under-resourced,
hmm.
very much in need of some hands and bodies. And
Sure.
we came together on Ellis Island, 300 of us, rolled up our sleeves. And I still remember the tears in the eyes of the National Park Service representative who, at the end of the day, said, "You did more in this one day than our team could have done in a matter of months, maybe even a year." And
Mm,
that shows kind of the collective ability of what we can do when we come together as an industry. And subsequently, we went to many places that were in need of our help. We went to the Gulf Coast post Katrina. We went to
mhm.
many other under resourced areas and areas that were literally coming out of disaster.
Disaster.
So,
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
perfect example, Hurricane Maria hitting Puerto Rico. We had an event there in 2019 where we went in the aftermath. And I think the true value there was to create a rallying cry, to bring people together. But also, if we think about it, back in those days, we didn't have social media. didn't have
Mm,
the ability to be able to say, hey, we're ready for business again and
right.
ready for tourism to start up and please come. Um,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
please come. No, no one can see you. You're almost screaming into the abyss, just hoping someone will answer. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now we have this, we have these
Tools.
social media tools to be able to make those
Hmm.
pronouncements, but Tourism Cares acted as that conduit at that time. So
Mm,
we knew that we had to start to transform some of our programming from more of that volunteerism model to initiatives that were really more focused on long-term impact. Uh,
mm,
we needed to continue to work strongly with the industry to help it move from intention to action, giving them tools, education tools, training tools, being able to be that connector to be able to say um, to somebody who just started their journey, here's
mhm.
somebody who's already further along on their journey. Um, they
Yeah.
they've handled a lot of the challenges that you're about to handle, and they want to help you to not have to stumble. So, how great is it that we can make this connection so that you don't have to go through the pain of going through those stumbling.
Learning it alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That is that speaks volumes to me as someone who obviously I work as a travel specialist, but also as an entrepreneur myself and having that opportunity to be alongside others who are going through it at different stages in their life and give you that wisdom. It's absolutely you just get pushed forward that much more in your journey and in a positive way because you're able to sort of preemptively, understand the risks involved or also, understand how to just deal with it when you're going through challenging parts of running a business, running a project that especially that has a social or sometimes environmental focus. I can imagine as well the challenges that one gets faced with. It's quite complex and you need all the support you can get.
yeah. And I think a lot of times it's just that a little bit of that self-doubt that when you're
Mhm.
doing something new, that you're always going to
True.
tell yourself like, wow,
You can't.
I don't know what I'm doing, or how long is this going to take? Wow, this is really difficult. It's more difficult than I thought. And then somebody jumps in to your point and says, I thought the same thing. So, and don't worry about it because we've gone from here to here in a matter of this time, and it's been transformative, and it's been a wonderful journey, and it really gives you a lot of hope and inspiration.
No, absolutely. And I mean, I can speak to it as, again, I run a social enterprise in Costa Rica that cycles airline seats and provides employment to women in rural areas. And there was a point last year, with everything also going on in the world and things changing that we said, like, I think this might be it. And then all of our funding that we had applied for got approved. And then it was like, never mind, we can keep doing this. And then now looking back at it, it's like, wow, you really have to learn to not give up, maybe just rest, ask for help when you can, and look for those resources because there's people around. And I mean, again, you mentioned the partnership with Untours Foundation and just looking for those people who are able to bring your project further along the way. And maybe it's not exactly how you intended it or thought it would be, but you can advance more together. And like you said, even these small little activations can make a huge difference as well, which I would love for you to give people more a little bit what tourism cares is today and what what does it look like today? Because it's multifaceted, and I would love for you to give our audience an opportunity to understand sort of what's its main mission, but what are the other areas in which it's helping today? Because I know its founding was built on, like you said, this volunteerism approach and getting connected even in sort of emergency scenarios, which is really interesting. But today, what does it look like? What does tourism cares sort of operate as?
Yeah, I mean, thinking about when I was speaking in Salt Lake City, one of the things that I always like to say is that I like to put things in terms of action verbs. So when I think about our mission, we can talk about results, we can talk about objectives and goals and things like that, but really, we know that what is so important is taking action and really activating our industry. And we do that through uniting the industry, educating the industry, inspiring the industry, and then really activating that industry to make commitments and to more or less kind of hold them accountable. I don't like to, make that sound heavy-handed, but I think we all need that accountability check-in sometimes, so we can really act in that role. And again, as I mentioned before, really help to connect others who can be resources for you on your journey.
Mm,
Um, it really, like, I think, that whole volunteer model was one that kind of showed the gravitas of how our industry can bring impact to the people and places of travel by simply rolling up sleeves. And now
mm,
we do that we roll up our sleeves in so many different ways, and we do it
right.
through helping to
Mhm.
educate the industry. We still bring
Sure.
the industry together, but we do it in so many different ways. We still have in-person events, but we try to foster opportunities to roll up our sleeves, but we don't make that the focal point. We make the focal point really about, putting a spotlight on local community change makers, bringing
Mm,
bringing our community out to see what they do, really hoping that we can have product developers in our audience live and breathe the experience so that they can adopt them and put them in their itineraries.
mhm,
Have travel advisors walk away with, I want to tell my clients about these wonderful experiences. So it's really getting to that activation point, which is all through bringing the industry together, educating them, inspiring them, and then really helping them along.
Yeah, it's wonderful. For everyone on the call, there's a map that you can actually go to on the Tourism Cares website, and you can look for different projects around the world. So if you're ever traveling and you're looking for a project that goes a little bit, beneath that typical traveler experience and educates you and allows you to connect with projects that have purpose, feel free to check it out. It's quite exceptional, and there's such an amazing network that y'all have built, and almost threaded everybody together to build a little bit of a stronger system. And I think that leads me to kind of where I wanted to take it, and it's shifting it a little bit, but we mentioned, these big impacts that can happen in the world, 9/11, but the pandemic. I mean, the travel industry, I think it changed as a result of the pandemic, and we spoke to it as now we work from our computers, and it's okay and it's normalized to be wherever in the world, which I think also was a big change. But one of the takeaways that we've been reflecting on is just how deeply some communities rely on tourism. And, when everything came to a halt, it wasn't just flights and vacations being canceled. It was actually like entire livelihoods for certain communities disappearing really overnight. And we saw this in rural communities. I saw this in Turrialba, in the small town that I live in Costa Rica. And it's sometimes not a bonus. It's really the backbone tourism of a community. And, local guides, homestays, artisan projects, suddenly it was all gone. And the pandemic exposed how incredibly powerful travel is, but it can also create this sort of vulnerability that I want to talk about. And I'm curious how you feel we can prevent this from happening again, or if there's ways, perhaps how does tourism cares even shape, a more responsible, sort of sustainable way to travel? And yeah, just wanted to hear your thoughts on that big topic.
Well, I mean, first of all, let me just say, I mean, I think we started off the conversation before we brought the audience in, and I got to know you a
Sure.
little bit better, and you told me about your social enterprise in Costa Rica, and it's really working with community leaders and independent entrepreneurs like yourself, who oftentimes don't really have that connection to the travel trade. We always say that, my having worked, for a tour operator and worked in what I would call more like mass tourism, it
Mhm.
just becomes the norm where you go to certain trade shows every year and you get to
Mhm.
connect with suppliers, and you have conversations with contemporaries, and you talk to them about their challenges. But so many of these independent community led enterprises are out there all by themselves. And
Hmm.
they don't have the luxury of being able to go to some of the events and the trade shows that we go to. They don't have the ability to make those
Sure.
connections, all of those things. So, the opportunity that we want to provide, like you were talking about, through the meaningful travel map is to get them on the map, which then
Mhm.
gives access to travel advisors, tour operators, and others who want to make that connection. And when that
Hmm.
happens, then those impact partners that we have on the map really start to see the true power of travel and tourism. They see it as the force for good that it can be. And a lot of times it's just a matter of the connections not there. They don't know the vernacular. There's a lot of learnings. They're mom and pop, oftentimes very much under capacity, and they're doing
Hmm.
20-hour days. And the last thing that they have the opportunity to do is spend some time to learn about the trade or how they make that connection.
Sure.
So we want to try to make that connection easier for them, get them on the map, but also help to really ensure their success by creating a community for them, giving them tools that they can have to better learn how to navigate our industry, and then obviously make the connections. And when those connections start to happen, a tour operator brings them into an itinerary, and people start to fall in love with these great, local community enterprises that have, as you mentioned, that social, environmental, cultural focus. Um,
Hmm.
Fall in love. They start telling others about it, and they go back. And that's the real
Right.
collapse.
That's the loop that we're trying to look for. Yeah, absolutely. I want to just say quick, because I saw somebody raise their hand. We're gonna leave questions to the end. If you do want to type in a question though, in the meantime, and it feels right, I'll be happy to answer. So just wanted to sort of handle that housekeeping. Um, but yeah, absolutely. It's important that there's this diversification as well on income, and this opportunity to have sort of that feedback loop where people are coming back. Like people aren't just passing through. They're not just, okay, coming, doing this experience and not engaging again. Like they come back, maybe they purchase a product online later, or they learn about you and they tell about others. Like that word of mouth is so powerful. And once you get put on the map, people see you more easily. And it is hard for these smaller projects. And I could speak to it myself. I often also tell people, like, you just have to come and see the project. I can't explain it to you because I don't have time to market it. I don't have time because I'm dealing with day-to-day operations. So I think what's beautiful of what you guys are doing is you're just being like, hey, shining a little light into an area where, somebody maybe didn't know it existed. And I feel like the pandemic forced us to sort of pause, and we also saw this activation of local tourism as well, like people like wanting to see their backyard, wanting to engage, wanting to understand what those mom and pop shops were doing and how they were able to survive. And some didn't, some did, but I think it was the power of, people coming together to try to ensure that, those projects weren't going to disappear as a result. And tourism cares, yeah, you guys are doing that. You guys are really creating access, which is so exciting.
Well, one of the things that was really part of the impetus for the map was our partnership with the Jordan Tourism Board. And I think it speaks to a lot of the elements a lot of the points that you're making. Um,
Mhm.
you go back to 2018, and we were preparing to do a meaningful travel summit in Jordan. And part of that was this idea that we were going to build this meaningful travel map of Jordan. We were
Hmm.
going to be able to spotlight 12 social enterprises along the Jordan Trail. But what's really important is the forethought that Jordan had around building out this map. So if you go back to that time, you think, okay, 2017, 2018, what was really
Yeah,
what was a really big term back then? That was the bucket list. I mean, it still is a big
sure.
term.
It is.
Most
Yeah.
of us have
Hmm.
bucket lists, and
Hmm.
and it's a great wish list to have. But I think for a country or destination, really any destination, but especially a destination like Jordan, that oftentimes got kind of looked upon as being a kind of a secondary destination market within the Middle East. So if you go to Egypt, if you go to Israel, then you go to Jordan, but not as
Hmm.
much a primary destination. And as
Hmm.
well, it was one where they were generating a lot of interest because Petra was on most people's
Right.
bucket list. But the
Right.
fear was that people would come to Petra, they'd check it off the list and never come back
And
to
meat.
Jordan.
Hmm.
And Jordan said, how can we ensure that that's not going to happen? We know
Hmm.
that if we get them off the beaten path, they will get to come to Petra. They will get to check that off the list. They will be wowed. But we want them to get off the beaten path. We want them to spend time in our country, meet our people, experience our culture, and then they will
Hmm.
come back. And that's exactly what has happened. And that is exactly
Hmm.
some of the challenges that remain today with over tourism, with aspects of people going to one place and then kind of getting turned off by maybe the success of that bucket list
Sure.
destination, rather
Hmm.
than really getting off the beaten path, and also the pushback of the local communities who say, yeah, it's great that you came to my country, but you didn't do
You haven't seen me. Yeah.
right, and you didn't do anything for our local community. You know,
Hmm.
the money wasn't really left in our community. So how do we ensure that that's going to happen? And that is our opportunity to push tourism further out, to identify these great enterprises, and that's the introduction for people to have to the true nature of that country. And when that happens, that's the impetus that makes them say, yeah, they're going to go back and they're going to talk about Petra, but the
Yeah.
reason why they're going to go back is because they fell in love with the people and the culture.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I had an intern who worked with our social enterprise from Canada, and she wrote a testimonial about her year that she spent with us. And it was something like, I will, never forget my time in Costa Rica, but it's the people that will like hold me, like of course there's the food, the everything, but it's those connections with like humans that are and seeing the impact in like one's work. If you're making a positive impact in somebody's lives, that connection, that bond that's created, of like that healthy sort of exchange that you're giving, that's being, compensated, like you're compensating their time for letting you into their life and their home, while also getting to really see what life is like. You're not just doing the, like you said, the typical travel experience, arriving at one of the, big, rather temples or monuments. You're actually going behind and saying like, oh, like I want to meet you, I want to hear about life and try your food. And that creates a different bond. And it's funny because I've seen it even with our travelers, is sometimes they've never done that before, and providing them that opportunity to sit down in even a local person's home and them
Yeah.
say like, oh wow, I had all of these assumptions and this is actually how it was. And it's absolutely world changing sometimes. Like it's definitely opening up a worldview that somebody didn't have otherwise. And until you actually go to that place and experience it, it can be difficult, but once that connection is made, I mean, you crave it and you want to go back. And I've never been to Jordan, but I'm inspired to go now.
Definitely, definitely. But I think so many places like Jordan and Costa Rica have that element.
Hmm.
And like
Sure.
you said, there's going to be those bucket list components, those, gosh,
Absolutely.
this country, I got to do X, Y, and
Yeah.
Z,
Gotta
you know,
see this place. Yeah, of
and no question, nobody's deterring anybody from doing that. But the whole
course.
reason why you're going to fall in love with that country is probably going to be by taking that step beyond going to the widely known attractions and really being able to explore and meet the people and experience their culture. And like you said, have that moment where, they're in somebody's home,
Hmm.
because that's the true experience. And, I
Hmm.
always say too if you think about tourism, it is really no different than how we look upon inviting people into our home.
Exactly.
That's what it
Hmm.
is. It's an
Same.
it's an open
Mhm.
arms, you know, um, opportunity. But there's certain things that you need to have respect. You have to be able to
Mhm.
say, do I take off my shoes when I come to this person's home? Is there an
Mhm.
occasion? Do I bring a gift?
Yep.
Is it a potluck dinner? Is it going to be a sit down dinner? Whatever the tradition might be, you want to
Yeah.
that tradition, and that's going to ensure that you're going to be invited back again. And I think
Hmm.
there's so many analogies that just goes hand in hand. And
Hmm.
it's that feeling when you've been invited, either symbolically or truly invited into somebody's home, and you have that experience. And then you say, wow, that left such an impression on me. And I can't wait to go back. I can't wait to get invited again.
Absolutely. And I think it's incredible, this opportunity to be able to be invited into someone's home. I think it's such a blessing, and being able to arrive with gratitude in these scenarios. And I want to take a step back, because this idea of like grassroots, organizations, what does grassroots mean? Can you help educate us, or those who might have never heard of that term before? And why are grassroots organizations, or these opportunities to go into someone's, home, what really makes an essential ingredient to today as what we know as like sustainable or regenerative tourism? Like, what is grassroots and why is it important? Mhm.
Well, great question. I don't know if I necessarily, I mean, I use that terminology somewhat. I mean, we
Mhm.
often say community tourism, which obviously,
Okay. Okay. Hmm.
obviously encompasses every grassroots, organization or every grassroots effort. I mean, I
Hmm.
think that my own personal definition is that, it just starts from the community.
Exactly.
It's born from the community.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
literally from the roots. It's
right.
like the first thing that pops up.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they're the ones who kind of hold the cultural knowledge, the
Yeah.
environmental wisdom, the social
Exactly.
networks that are really needed to build truly sustainable experiences that are beneficial not only to the traveler but to the local residents. And that's when we get that circular value chain where everybody is feeling that tourism can be a force for good for the local economy, for the traveler's experience. So partnering with them really helps to ensure that tourism really lifts these um, local priorities. It distributes economic benefits equitably, and
Hmm.
really helps to protect what makes that place special.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I can speak to it as well with some of the farmers that I know in the region that I live in. They would not be able to be financially sustainable with only selling their production. Like for them to lift themselves out of, or get higher education, or be able to um, sort of dream and build their dream, farm and project. Tourism has been able to just give them that little lift beyond, what they would be able to sell their crops at. And seeing that like healthy balance between, we can still, eat organically, we can still be in nature, we can still celebrate these, we can still go rafting and do the zip lining and do the fun stuff, but we can also support a project in transforming the local flora and fauna in a positive way and live sort of in this symbiosis. And I think that's what our trips are about as well. It's like this equal, well-balanced experience where you can do some educational activity. You can also engage, hopefully hands-on. Most of our itineraries have that sort of history of volunteerism, right? Actually volunteering in some capacity, rather if it's coral reef restoration or if it's, beach cleanup. I'm thinking of my trip to Bali that I just did a few weeks ago. So we do lots more, but fresh on my mind. And I think that just, yeah, it creates a lot more of a like a healthy approach to living together in harmony, with the natural world, but also with each other and learning each other's cultures. It's such a gift, travel.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and I think too is kind of the other thing when we were talking about the pandemic, and the like is that, you know, there isn't probably enough of a focus on the fact that it is the underrepresented communities that suffer the most during crisis.
Mhm.
And that's
Exactly.
and that's why
Mhm.
the importance of uplifting them is so great
So important. Hmm.
because we're
Hmm.
now seeing that we're prone to crisis, and crisis can happen without warning, and it can shut things down completely. And having kind of experienced that, and realizing how tough that is for us who have so much, you can only
Right.
imagine what it's like for those who don't. And so, and once some of these communities and their local customs and such, once they disappear, it's
Never gonna come
not
back. Mhm.
back. And so I
Mhm.
think kind of that's the underlying, motivation, at least for me, of, uplifting these local communities is also recognizing their vulnerability.
Absolutely. No, when I wrote my thesis, so my thesis actually in Costa Rica was on the impact of tourism on specifically women populations in mainly rural areas. And in all of the reading sort of prep work that I did before I arrived, it was talking about the recession and all of these, big moments that have happened, and the impact that women as well in the tourism industry are often the first to lose their, like local women, first to lose their jobs because they hold, sort of like low skilled labor where they're working in the kitchen or they're working in the cleaning. They're not necessarily the owners of these industries, and so like you said, like creating those moments to activate them throughout the year and use local agencies or use local organizations that are doing really great work. And that's what we try to do at Discover Tour too, is make those connections with these projects so that regardless of what happens, that they're able to hopefully survive those harder waves that sort of hit us. And like you said, unfortunately, it's becoming sort of more normal that we're dealing with these big moments and that can really, really impact the industry. And we have to be more cognizant of where we're putting our money when we have it, right? So that it can be in the pockets of people who are resilient and resourceful and giving back, that are really put money into certain projects and you see them duplicated in many ways, and not all companies you get to see that.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I want to be able to open it up to questions, but I do want to end on one final sort of question. I I want to know what excites you most about the future. I want to hear what excites you about the future of travel in today's world. And yeah,
Well, I
I'd
think
love
what
to.
excites me the most is really having conversations like this, and the
Mm.
fact that how this came about was because of, you and your organization's interest in meaningful and responsible travel. It really helps me to believe that there's momentum and that we're starting to see a movement. Um, I'll be the first one to say I'm a bit of a naysayer when it comes to survey results because I
Hmm.
think that people like to project themselves in a certain way that's a little idealistic. So I
Hmm.
think, and questions are always, cast in a certain way
Sure.
where, it's like, how do you really answer that question? No. So
Right.
like, I love the one survey question that I've seen is just like, do you want to leave a place better than when you came? And I kind of think,
Hmm.
well, who's
Ooh.
going to say no to that question?
Yeah, yeah. It's like,
Everybody's going to
no, I
say
don't want them
yes
to
to the
be better.
question. Right. So I think a lot of times I really kind of try to dive into some of these survey questions. But on the other hand, um, I don't want to say I'm guilty of it, but I feel the need to use survey results to motivate because we know that
Mhm.
we're in a marketplace that, a market driven, um, being redundant, a
Mhm.
market-driven marketplace. But what I'm saying is that in any marketplace,
Mhm.
consumer demand is king.
Right.
And so if we start to tell those who are providing experiences, services, tours, whatever the case is, that this is what people want, then they're going to provide
Mhm.
because they're
Mhm.
looking at, consumer demand. So I love when I see statistics that show that more and more consumers are being much more conscious about
Right.
meaningful and responsible travel. But I'm the first one to also say, do I really believe it's 80% or whatever the case is? Because I know that people project themselves a certain way. It's very easy to
Right.
answer a question about whether you're thinking sustainably because nobody likes to say, I'm not thinking sustainably. Uh,
Of course.
right. Or they are. But the true question is, are you willing to spend $100 more, $200 more, $500 more? Or
Right.
are you willing to spend the time to research it hard enough to actually find options that may not cost any more, but you're just going to have to put a little bit more time into
To find.
finding them. So those are like the deep dive questions that I really want to ask. But I also know that if I can show somebody that 80% of the people are thinking this way, that might be motivation for them to say, well, then I'm going to diversify my products. I'm going to,
Mhm.
really take a dive into integrating community-led enterprises into my itineraries. I'm going to start to do these things. I'm going to start to look at how do I make my tours carbon neutral. I'm going to start to do all these things because there's consumer demand. So what excites me is the fact that I'm seeing that we're starting to gain a groundswell around responsible and meaningful travel. People are starting to incorporate this type of thinking into their decision making in terms of their travel decisions. And that's very exciting to me because I know that's what it takes. Even though we have so many good examples, even though we have so many really great and wonderful voices in our industry that should be
Mhm.
inspiration enough, I
Yeah.
know that what really drives people is when the consumer speaks and says, this is what I want in my travel experience, that's when we're really going to start to see, movement. And I think we're starting to get to that place where it's starting to happen.
I think so too. And it's been inspiring for us to see we have some newer audiences coming into Discover Core this year, and we're their first introduction to this kind of travel before. And when I was in Bali, I said to some of my travelers, like, I can tell this is your first time traveling like this. And uh, I'm grateful you're embracing the experience, and you can see that impact. Like they look at things differently as a result. And I agree. I think it's an exciting time for us. I think while, this sort of movement started many years ago, I feel like it's more and more coming into people's sort of day to day and I hear it on the phones. I get to hear people, ask for this, and it's very exciting when I'm like, wow, you found us. You found what you're looking for, which is, not not the typical travel experience. We're going a little bit deeper and making those connections. Thank you so much, Greg. I'm so grateful that I got to chat with you. Again, we have some mutual friends in common, and it was just such a beautiful serendipitous coincidence to be able to interview you today and have you on our webinar series. This is a new series that we sort of launched a few months ago, and I'm grateful that we've had such awesome people on the call and inspire our Discover Core audience as well to continue on this travel with purpose journey and to educate themselves further. I want to give everyone an opportunity to ask any questions in the Q&A, rather for Greg or I, or anything regarding Discover Core Tourism Cares, please feel free to throw your questions in the chat. Unfortunately, we can't actually see you or hear you in a webinar, so you do have to actually type in your question into the chat if that works. Do you have any travel plans going on this summer, Greg? Are you going anywhere? Are you staying uh you said Orlando, right? Is that
Yeah,
where you said? Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. Mm.
Well, we do two meaningful travel summits a year, one global and one in North America. So last year we were in Panama, so we were right
Okay.
adjacent
Nice,
to
next
you.
door. Yeah, neighbor.
And we were also in Willamette Valley, Oregon.
Uh-huh.
This year, we were not able to land on one destination for our North American event, so we're doing a road show. So instead of being in
Ooh,
one place
in
for
one
3 days,
place.
we're in three places for 1.5 days. So we had our first one in Miami in May, and we'll be in Pittsburgh in October, and we'll be in Galveston in November. So I'm excited for the opportunity to go to three different places that have three different sets of challenges and three different sets of local change makers that we get to put a spotlight on.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have been working with Thailand in terms of building out their meaningful travel map, in terms of positioning them as a true leader in meaningful and responsible travel. They have conducted a meaningful travel fam with us, and this year we're going to conduct our meaningful travel summit there in September. So I am going to be able to go to Thailand in September, and then we're going to be doing a meaningful travel fam with the state of Hawaii. And I'll be there at the end of that month. I happen to have family there, so I'm just going to bridge that so I don't have to come all the way back to Orlando, and I get to spend some
Yeah, you can just
extra time in Hawaii, so which is not a bad thing.
not a bad thing at all. That sounds like an awesome plan. Wow. That's amazing. I looks like we do have a couple of questions. Some people are asking about the travel map, so I just threw in the Travel Cares sort of or website, and then you can find the map on there for sure. And
Well,
then
and
also, yeah,
let me just amplify the fact that it's
sure.
a resource for any, travel advisor, tour operator. But if you happen to be, an enterprise owner like yourself,
Hmm.
that we, have the vetting criteria on our website, take a look at it. If you qualify to be on the map, there's no cost to you to be on
Yeah,
the map. So all you have to do is fill out the expression of interest, and we can get your profile finalized and we can get you up on the map. We
cool.
typically work with DMOs, and that's how we populate the
Hmm.
map. But it doesn't mean that this can't be done independently. If you have a
Okay.
great social enterprise like you do, Lynn, then just go to our website and shoot us an email, and we'll get you
I
on
will.
the map.
No, definitely I will. We're trying to also put our little Turrialba town on the map. We don't have sort of the big tourism like most of other areas of Costa Rica, so it's important that we can be seen. We're always saying like Turrialba para el mundo, like Turrialba to the world. They're funny enough, you find people from our small town everywhere, but you gotta be able to be put on some other maps for people to see you. Somebody asked, is it for travelers as well? So is tourism cares for people in the travel business or is it also for travelers? Could you speak to that, Greg?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that if you go to our website, most of the things on the website are really open source. So, anyone can go to our website. We were born from the industry, but our hope, as I mentioned, there's nothing better than seeing, consumer interest. We have a great partnership with Afar Magazine, which is a consumer-based, travel magazine that puts a really strong focus on responsible, meaningful travel. And, one of the things that we talk to them is about really having a greater voice with the consumer
Mhm.
traveler. That is not how we were founded. We're more industry centric, but I can't say that that isn't the direction that we'd like to see more and more interest. And we do have a what we call a professional membership, which is just $99 a year. So if it's something that you have that type of interest, or if you're in a startup mode, or you're just at a
Mhm.
place where you can't join us at the base membership level as an organization, then you should look into becoming a professional member.
Okay. No, this is wonderful recommendations. I also see somebody else is asking, how do you recommend a travel advisor getting started with planning meaningful group tours that will attract clients? I can also provide some perspective, but I would love to hear from you, Greg, first.
Well, like I said, I spoke at ASTA, and I think one thing that's really exciting is that we're spending more and more time working with the travel advisor community. We just brought on Sean Whitley from Travel Relations, and he has a huge database of travel advisors that he works with, and we put
Mhm.
him onto our board. He's been a longtime supporter of Tourism Cares. As I mentioned, ASTA is one of our founding members. We work with a number of the named consortia who are members of Tourism Cares. So we've been working with them to try to get our education platforms as a shared network with a lot of different travel advisor organizations. Like I said, if you go to our website, you're going to find that most of our things are open source, but there are some
Mhm.
elements that might be member only. But if you're also a member of that consortia, then you talk to that consortia about how you can get access to all of the education resources that are available. So there's just a lot. Some of it is very much meant to be kind of introductory, giving you some background um, into really all aspects of kind of sustainability, and but going deep into some issues, some particular issues like climate action, into you know um, you know how do you pursue your DEI journey, whether
Yeah.
or child welfare aspects, animal welfare aspects, those types of things that really are major tenets of responsible travel, to give you that greater knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think everyone is so inspired. Everyone's asking for the website. Hopefully, everyone's able to see. I am sending it to everyone, so hopefully people can be able to. It's tourismcares.org in case anyone wants to just type it in and you want to bookmark it right away. I also think for the question around, yeah, travel advisor getting started, I mean, if you ever want to reach out to us and get some advice, I'm here to hop on a call after this and give you some recommendations. We obviously work with other travel advisors as well. If you're interested in our specific itineraries, like we really offer curated itineraries that, depending, it might be an interesting opportunity for you to bring your group. We do private group experiences as well if you're looking for sort of like you want a similar experience, but you want it just for your population, we can definitely talk. I think we've been doing this for over a decade as well, sort of curating these meaningful travel group tours, and would be more than willing to share some resources and give you some suggestions. So just wanted to end that
Yeah, no,
for
and
the
similarly, reach out. I mean, we do a help desk, so you can get a help desk appointment, and we could, talk to you about, some resources that you might need, or answer some of your questions. Certainly do our best to answer whatever questions you might have.
Yeah, absolutely. Somebody is also asking about my social enterprise, which is so nice. Appreciate the love. It's called Wear Sauce. So we are mainly sort of slow fashion brand. We make products out of Southwest Airline seats and other sustainable materials like pineapple leather, um, and e-leather, which is a sustainable alternative to genuine leather made out of England that has partnered with us. So we use all different kinds of materials, but we use it as a form of employment for people to be able to access meaningful and educational employment. So while we teach our staff to sew high quality products, we also use it as an opportunity to provide like personal development courses for them to be able to sort of take their lives in different directions, whether if they want to learn about more about child rearing because they're a single mother who's dealing with kids, or they have suffered from domestic violence before. And so we're going to bring in special speakers, but we work with a psychologist and have since the beginning of our experience the same sort of person who's accompanied us throughout our whole journey and watched, both my husband and I, who's the other founder, sort of build the company from the ground up, but also for our employees who've gone through really like transformative life experiences, who've been able to build up their livelihoods and really, graduate high school, build the first houses as a result of these sort of activations. So we just built our first souvenir shop. You can come have a coffee with us, Greg, in Turrialba. Would be happy to host you and share with you some local coffee, specialty coffee from the region, and a nice locally made cacao chocolate bar.
I'll look
So,
forward to it.
and anyone else on the call too, please, if you're in Costa Rica and you need any advice, let me know. Well, Greg, it was such a pleasure having you. I hope I answered everyone's questions. If anybody does, want to reach out, you can email at, I'm gonna type in here, info at where's this is, I'm gonna send my Discover for one, sorry. And I can transfer any questions that you might have for Greg as well and get those over to you, Greg, if anybody's looking for you. Help build those connections as well.
Yeah, happy to. Thank you so much for having me, Lynn.
No, it was such a pleasure. I hope we do get to meet in person. And really, really appreciate you taking the time to be on our webinar today. And thank you for everyone else for joining and engaging and hearing from Greg. It's been a pleasure. Hope everyone has a great weekend. All
Thank
right.
you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye
Bye.
bye.